All right, a happy Tuesday. Hopefully everyone is doing great. We'll do we weren't going to do a trade recap video just because I taped the podcast with Zach Lowe that should be out. And then Adrian Griffin gets fired in Milwaukee, and I'm thinking, you know what, let's tie in both transactions into one video. I'm not going to go deep into the woods as far as the Miami-Charlotte trade, just because we talked about it at length before the deal happened. Basically what Miami was faced with. The trade guides are out. You can read about Charlotte and Miami. They both have been updated. From Miami's perspective, the goal was, how do you upgrade the roster now? How do you get below the second apron further? How do you go about giving yourself some flexibility in the offseason to try to remain under the second apron? It's all kind of a balancing act. And I think when you look at it from the Heat's perspective, a team that had lost 3 in a row, had not been playing good basketball, Lowry gets moved to the bench, is on a big tradable contract on an expiring, not part of the future. You go out and do the deal now and don't wait until February 8th, because if that's the best thing that comes to fruition, great. Miami gets flexibility under the second apron. They'll have the flexibility now, barring another trade, to go out and possibly use cash in a deal in the offseason, to go out and aggregate contracts in a deal. They did not have that option before this trade happened, because they were about 189,000 over the second apron. So that clears their finances, saves them about $15 million towards the luxury tax, improves the roster, gets an upgrade at guard, and it works out for Miami. Now, from the pick perspective, Miami owed, now this is important, Miami owed a 2025 protected top 14 to Oklahoma City, unprotected in 2026 if it did not convey. They are sending Charlotte a 2027 top 14 protected first and an unprotected first in 2028. So here's how it works. If Oklahoma City receives the Miami first in 25, Charlotte will get a 27 top 14 protected first that conveys to unprotected in 28. If Oklahoma City does not get a 2025 first, if Miami sends their unprotected 2026 unprotected, then Charlotte will now get a 2028 unprotected first. So the doomsday scenario, if you're the Heat, would be 2 unprotected first, one going to Oklahoma City in 26 and one going to Miami, into Charlotte in 28. The Heat have 1 tradable first in 2030. I don't see them moving that right now. They can move their 2024 first the night of the draft. Potentially they could, if they alter those pick protections and knock off and eliminate make them all unprotected, they can potentially at the night of the draft go 24, 29, and 31. That's it. That's it. How you're looking at it from a draft perspective for Miami. As I said, they save money towards the tax. They can go out and sign a player to that 15th roster spot. They create a $6.5 million trade exception. It's a smart move for Miami as far as a player that can help now. From Charlotte's perspective, it's open season in Charlotte outside of, I would say, LaMelo, Brandon Miller, probably Nick Smith. I would say everybody on that roster should be for sale. My big question was, is ownership, how much of involvement there? This is one of these rare trades that we haven't seen in the past where Charlotte is flipping a player and now they are getting a draft asset. They've got $86 million in salary next year. That equates to between $50 and $60 million in room. They can flip that Kyle Lowry contract again, as long as they don't aggregate money, for a player that extends into next year, and maybe you can keep on building draft assets back. They've got that Gordon Hayward contract at 31.5, Miles Bridges, PJ Washington. Those are some names to keep an eye on. But this is going to be a teardown. There's no staying in the middle here in Charlotte right now. If you're new ownership and the goal is that, maybe we bring in a new front office or new head coach, we are taking, I don't know how much further steps back you can go, but we are tearing this down and then we were rebuilding it how we like to see. It's extremely, extremely difficult for Charlotte to pull off what like Indiana has done and basically kind of stayed in the middle. It's a smart deal. Rozier had value, as it's evident by that 2027 or 28 first that is going back to Charlotte. Remember, they owe San Antonio a 24 protected first and a 25 protected first. They did not have anybody else's number one. So like what Oklahoma City does and Utah, those teams like that, Charlotte did not have another team's first round pick here. Let's switch to Milwaukee real quick. I am not surprised. I am not surprised at all that Adrian Griffin got fired. 30-13. When you look and watch this Milwaukee team play, it's an inflated record based on a weak schedule. They should have lost in Detroit on Saturday. 21st in the NBA in defensive efficiency. Top 10 a year ago. They've taken a major step back. They're basically in Atlanta right now on steroids. They're basically, and they're fortunate because they have Giannis and Middleton has played well, and you go out and do the Damian Lillard trade. I am not surprised at all. Been part of a front office that let go of a coach, Byron Scott, who took a Nets team to 2 NBA finals in a row and got fired the following year when the team was 500. When you have Giannis on your roster, you are doing everything in your mindset and that you're capable of putting the best around him. And this is not a discredit to Adrian Griffin. It is an impossible situation for a rookie head coach who loses his top assistant in Terry Stotts before the season to come in here and everybody expecting them to basically be, top 5 in defense. And it was going to take a while. And this is what comes back to when Giannis signed that extension. And I got laughed at. And it doesn't matter. Contracts do not matter. The only thing that matters is that if this guy ever asked out, he's not on an expiring contract, but now he's got 3 or 4 years left. And I'm not going there saying Giannis is going to ask out. But the last thing you want to do if you're Milwaukee is say, you know what? Let Coach Griffin figure it out when we get to the playoffs. Let him figure it out for the last 41 games here. When you look at that, what will happen is you'll get knocked out in the second round by Philadelphia or by Miami or Cleveland or Indiana or one of these two teams. And now you're back to square one when you're looking for that next head coach in the offseason. So if you're going to rip the Band-Aid off, you do it at 43 games in where you can come in and hire a more established head coach here, whether it be a guy like Doc Rivers here. Joe Prunty takes over at the interim, third time around. It's remarkable. When you look at since 2013, Larry Drew, Jason Kidd, Joe Prunty, Mike Budenholzer, Adrian Griffin, Joe Prunty, and now. I mean, you have the feet to the fire when you have a championship or bust team. And we talked about it on the trade guide video. There's limited assets as far as when you can go out and what you can trade. It's basically Bobby Portis and Pat Connaughton. Those are your 2 trade assets. You don't have ones to move. You don't have pick swaps unless you do what Phoenix did, which is, basically re-swap a first. I don't know a team out there would want to do that. It doesn't really make sense here. So I totally get it from Milwaukee's standpoint, and it's not pretty, but you basically kind of rip off the Band-Aid right now. Gives you 30 games to figure it out before the playoffs start. It's a shitty bit. I'm sorry. It's not a great business, and I get it, but it's a wins-oriented business. And 38-13, as I said, is basically an inflated roster, and there are games when you are non-competitive and you get blown out. And I get it. You're from a standings perspective, you're better where you were a year ago. But you got to look at the eye test on the court, and the eye test on the court showed a Milwaukee team that was going to lose in the second round. Have a great day.